My name's Joe, as she said. I'm the founder of the American Hike Guides Association. I've been a full-time mountain guide for a better part of my life, for probably 12 plus years. And I've been involved in search and rescue and mountain rescue since the 90s. But I'll get right to it here. So the first thing we'll go over about hiking is just some basic equipment. Due to the camera issues, I won't be demoing any equipment, but we'll talk about some of the equipment. And then we'll talk about some training, some terrain issues, and some basic safety protocols or procedures. So the first thing we're going to talk about is equipment. Basic equipment is going to be clothing. You could wear whatever you want if you're just going on a leisurely stroll in the woods, but depending on weather conditions, clothing kind of gets really important. You can opt for a pair of hiking pants and a t-shirt, usually popular, but the materials that they're made out of are really important, especially when weather's a factor there. But usually polypropylene or polyester are good materials to wear. If you're out there in a winter environment, no matter where it is, whether it's permanent snow covered or non-permanent snow covered, a 3-layer clothing system is always good. I'm sure you guys can Google that, but it starts off with a base layer, which again is usually a wicking material, polyester, polypropylene. Your second layer is going to be your warming layer, which is usually fleece, wool, or something of that nature. And then your outer layer is going to be your shell layer. That's going to be your waterproof or your water resistant layer. But again, that's more for a winter environment. But you do want to make sure that your clothing can wick away moisture off of your body. Cotton's a bad choice. It loses its warming properties when it's wet. It takes a long time to dry. So you want to wear clothing that has some type of wicking properties to it. And then the next thing would be backpack choice. Depending on how long or duration of your hike or the terrain you're on or what you want to bring with you. But a day pack's usually good, something small, similar to like a school backpack. When you start carrying weight or things like that, that's when your backpack should be, have a stable suspension system to it, like a hip belt and, more padding on the shoulder straps, more adjustability on it as far as straps go. And it also depends on the activities you're doing along on your hike. So, you might want a waterproof backpack. You might want a waterproof first aid kit. Are there a lot of rivers along the way? Is there potential for me to slip and fall into one of those? So waterproofing your, essentials is always a good idea. And then as far as backpacks go, most of them are activity specific now. It used to be kind of generalized in the 80s, the 90s, and the early 2000s, but now they're pretty specific for activities. If you're snowshoeing, there's backpacks that have really great snowshoe lashings on them. If you're a climber, or an ice climber or rock climber, it has pretty specific attachment points on the outsides of the pack, especially for rope. And then for day hiking, usually there's large water bottle pockets and there isn't, kind of bells and whistles on the backpack. And then another item is trekking poles. I don't personally use trekking poles, but they definitely do come in handy for a lot of people for momentum purposes, stability purposes. If you have knee issues or joint, or lower extremity joint issues on your legs, like ankles or feet, trekking poles are definitely a great option. If you do carry trekking poles, make sure they're a good quality trekking pole. You don't want it to kind of fail on you when you're out, 8-10 miles into the wilderness on a long day hike or an overnight trek. So you want to make sure that those trekking poles are going to withstand that. For day hiking, you could probably lose some of the powdered cups that they put on the bottom of the trekking poles, but make sure you know how to repair them as well. Duct tape is always your friend in the wilderness, oddly enough, especially for trekking poles, but you can carry some different attachment points as well for those, or different hand straps. Another piece of basic equipment would be footwear. Adequate ankle support is really important for that. Some people, younger crowd really as well, they don't need that. They're out there in trail running sneakers or, whatever type of quick footwear. I know everybody's all about the kind of barefoot hiking lately, but when you get onto some uneven terrain, that becomes a little bit of an issue. But you do want some adequate ankle support. This way, there's no potential for any kind of injuries or any further issues down the road. And make sure your shoes are fairly waterproof. They don't have to be fully waterproof, but you definitely want something that's water resistant. If you're out there for just a day, they make great day hiking shoes where they provide a good amount of stability and cushion, and a fair amount of water resistance, but they also wick away moisture from your feet. As far as socks go, I wear, there are 2-layer sock systems. I usually just wear a pair of wool socks, but you can wear sock liners if you have issues with blistering on your feet or hot spots or anything. Sock liners are nice because it creates a little barrier between your feet and your sock. They're really smooth, and it kind of mitigates that whole rubbing issue that creates those hot spots, which in turn turn to blisters. And then footwear also, another thing to keep in mind is what terrain you're on. That's how I choose my footwear when I go out for my, I don't do too many hiking trips anymore. Mine are a little more advanced, like canyoneering and rock climbing and ice climbing, but I do pick my footwear before I leave based on what I'm going to be doing and the terrain I'm going to be doing it on. So if it's a really rocky trail, I might pick a higher boot and maybe some gaiters, which are a little piece of material that keeps rocks and sand and sediment out of the top of your boot. And then if I'm going into a water area, I might not, if there's a lot of river crossings, I might pick a shoe that can handle situations like that a little better. And they make pretty specific footwear for various activities as well, just like your backpacks, which is great. So a basic list of things that you're going to carry out there with you they're called the 10 essentials. Now there's a classic list and there's also an updated list. I'll read off the classic list really quickly, and then we'll talk about the updated list because it's pretty, it kind of itemized everything out into groups now. So the classic list is map, compass, extra clothing, sunglasses, sunscreen, flashlight, fire starter, matches, knife, extra food, and first aid supplies. Most of those things on there can be kept into one category. So the updated list is it's more categorized, which is great. It works out really well. So as far as the updated 10 essentials go, the first one on the list is navigation, and that could be map, compass, GPS device, whatever source that you use. I always recommend map and compass, and navigation skills are they're not necessary to be in the backcountry, but they're definitely a good thing to learn. It really depends on where you are and how well the trails are maintained and blazed. But navigation skills, it can't hurt to get them. And you can get them, you can go on YouTube, you can buy a book, whatever your learning style is. You can take a class from a reputable professional or a military-based guide service, something like that. Next thing on the list is going to be illumination. Now, this could be any light source, headlamp, flashlight, whatever works for you. I like headlamp because I can kind of go hands-free, especially at night if I'm hiking or, traveling through the backcountry. Headlamps are great because, especially if you're doing any kind of night navigation, you have both of your hands free to do what you need to do. At night, red headlamps are always better, so your eyes don't have to readjust to the light. That can end up causing eye issues. It's also really straining on the eyes, end up with headaches and issues like that. So red lights are good for night. As far as headlamps go, depending on what I'm doing out there, I'll either choose an LED light or a halogen light. LED is that's good for your kind of basic stuff out there. For search and rescue, I always opt for a halogen light or something brighter. LED lights are really bright right in front of you, but they don't really have any depth, so they don't shoot very far unless there's something directing them, which I see in a lot of these newer flashlights where they have a cone on the head with some mirrors that reflect it or refract the light. But halogen lights definitely have a lot more depth to them. They work for me. Next thing on the updated 10 essentials is sun protection. So this would be sun protection for your eyes, your skin, and your lips. All three we want to protect from, especially your eyes and your lips. I don't wear any chemicals or sun protection like that, but I do cover myself up with clothing if I'm in especially this time of year in the Northeast where there's no leaves on the trees. The sun is just beating down on the back of your neck or your face or whatever. So definitely want to cover yourself up and protect you from that. Depending on the environment you're in, depends on, or maybe your, genetics or health history might depend on what type of sunscreen you're using, what level of SPF, but that would be a personal choice. Next thing on the list, or next category in this updated 10 essentials, will be repair kit and tools. This could be a wide array or grouping of things. Your basic thing could be a knife or a multi-tool, duct tape, extra buckles for your backpack, maybe a trekking pole repair kit, things of that nature. I usually just carry a multi-tool with me. That works for me. Depending on what activity I'm doing while I'm in the wilderness really determines what type of knife I carry with me. If I'm working in a canyon or a river-based activity like canyoneering or waterfall rappelling or swiftwater rescue, I'll carry a fixed blade knife so it's easier for me to use and there's no potential for it to kind of sever onto anything. But again, that's specific for what you're doing out there. Duct tape is great. Works for a wide range of things as far as repair goes. A lot of people I see put it in their first aid kits. I don't really recommend that in your first aid kit. I mean, it's nice if you need to do any splinting for long bone fractures or things of that nature. But it's definitely great for a repair kit. Next thing on the list would be fire materials or fire making materials. This could be lighters, flint and steel, waterproof matches, whatever your source is. It's always nice to have multiple sources as well. I carry a flint and steel with me, and then maybe I'll throw a small cigarette lighter, like a butane lighter, in one of my smaller pockets on my backpack. Or little fire making kits are nice to have too. They may have some fat wood in them or some jute string. Whatever works for you. Definitely have something that's reliable with you as far as that goes, and multiple sources are great. Next thing would be emergency shelter. This could be as heavy as a full-blown tent, but again, how long are you out there for? So if you're out there for just a day, even a small tarp is nice, but think about if you were to get stuck out there for the night, is it going to be somewhat comfortable? If you're stuck out there for the night, you're never going to be comfortable, but you definitely want something that's going to protect you from the elements, like rain, wind, snow, things like that. I usually carry a small bivy sack that's made by SOL, which is Survive Outdoors Longer, which is owned by Adventure Medical Kits. They make some pretty good survival gear. Their emergency shelter is nice. I've tested it out numerous times. It works for me, and it has some elasticity to it too, so I can get in there with my boots on, and it's not going to pop a hole in it. The inside has a mylar type reflective material, so it uses my body heat to keep me warm, and the outside's some type of plastic. I'm not positive on what it is, but it definitely protects you from wind and rain and moisture. It's great. Next thing on the list would be nutrition. This is, again, a personal choice. I like to bring fruit with me, or maybe some granola bars, but whatever works for you. Make sure proteins are nice to have as extra food and snack, but remember, you're going to need a lot of water to digest proteins in your body, and I'm looking at like 16 ounces to 32 ounces to properly digest them. So think about that when you do bring extra food on, make sure there's water sources along your route so you can replenish those for yourself. I kind of steer away from proteins during the day. I'll eat a heavy protein breakfast in the morning before I head out, like, eggs and bacon or, whatever protein source you use. And then I'll wait till I get home at the end of the day, or if I'm staying out for the night, I'll do that in camp. This way I'm not using a lot of water during the day. Which brings us to hydration, extra water, really important. I usually carry 32 ounces of water with me, so a quart of water. And if I'm walking along a trail or hiking, I make sure there's some type of water source where I can, procure water from. And you want to make sure that if you are procuring water in the wilderness, that you're filtering it and purifying it. Purifying is really important. Filtering is not so important, but purifying the water is. So you want to make sure you take out, any bacteria, protozoas, and viruses as well. The days of just cupping water up out of a stream are long and gone, unfortunately. So make sure you have that. And there's various ways to purify water. You can do as simple as boiling it, as long as you have some type of stove choice or fire method out there. Or you can use chemical purification, which could be iodine, as long as nobody has any iodine allergies, which seem to be fairly common lately, or, chlorine dioxide or bleach. Just make sure you read the percentages as far as that goes. And then there's also UV light. There's a lot of UV purification methods, which I see out there, like SteriPen, and there's a couple others as well. Those are great. But again, your water should be filtered and then purified. Or you can make a filter. Moss is always a great thing to use. It has a lot of antimicrobial properties, but chemical or boiling is definitely your best bet. Insulation is next on the list, which could be extra clothing. I always carry an extra pair of socks and maybe a thin wool or some type of beanie that I could put on that's windproof as well to keep heat in my body. But depending on the activities you're doing while you're out there, or the extent of your stay in the back country or front country or the wilderness, that really determines on the clothing choices. If you need an extra shirt, an extra pile layer, that 3-layer clothing system I mentioned earlier is definitely great because you could kind of shed layers as needed or add layers on. I do bring an extra top layer with me if it's a winter environment. So if I'm out ice climbing or mountaineering or snowshoeing or whatever I'm doing, I'll bring an extra, like a pile jacket. It could be down or synthetic, depending on what I'm doing, but I'll bring an extra warming layer for my upper body. So that's pretty much it, with one thing as far as the updated 10 essentials go. First aid is the final one. I'm a wilderness EMT advanced. So my first aid knowledge is pretty high up there as far as that goes. It's advanced life support. But so I carry things in my first aid kit that I'm going to need as a guide, and also that are in my scope of training. Don't carry things in your first aid kit that you don't know how to use. There's no reason for that. It's just excessive weight, and there's potential for you to cause more harm if you're not properly trained in that, using those things. But a first aid kit should be fairly comprehensive for the terrain that you're going onto, and also for the remoteness of the hike. As a guide, I have to, maintain myself, but I also have clients that I need to take care of. So my goal at the end of my job or day is to get those people home safe and smiling and happy. If something was to go wrong, I have everything I need in my first aid kit to deal with any situation that may arise out there. We'll talk about first aid kits a little bit. I won't go too in depth on them. That's for another class and another time. But first aid kits, you should get training in wilderness medicine. That'll definitely make you more confident out there. You can learn that on your own, I'm sure. You can take a basic first aid class from the American Red Cross or your local first aid squad. But wilderness medicine is definitely good. And, there's basic level wilderness medicine, which could be wilderness first aid. That's like a 16-hour class. And then you can get really advanced to remote paramedic. But it depends on what you're going to do. Most people just get the wilderness first aid level. It's 16 to 20 hours, couple days. If you're going to be hiking out there a lot or bringing groups of people, that's definitely a good recommendation to get. Then there's wilderness first responder. That's 80 hours to 100 hours. There's outdoor emergency care. There's 7 different levels. And then there's wilderness EMT, which is, like 200 hours, and there's wilderness advanced and remote paramedic. But I could talk for hours about that. That's definitely, I'm definitely an expert in the wilderness medicine field. That's definitely one of my addictions, I should say. It's really a great thing. But wilderness medicine, any of those levels will make you more confident when you're out there. It'll make you, some people, it makes them kind of push themselves to do more remote hikes, because, they have that safety cushion that they can deal with anything. Usually the things that you're going to encounter out there in the woods, as far as first aid goes, on the extreme end, it could be long bone fractures or head injuries, but usually it's on the very simple end, where some minor bumps and bruises from things along the trail, like thorn bushes or flora and fauna, things like that, poison ivy, maybe some bug bites. But those are usually the basic things you're going to deal with. Just make sure you have things in your kit that, if any of those things do arise with yourself or anybody, if you have problems with that, you have things that can kind of deal with those situations. As far as some first aid kit contents go, the only one recommendation I'd like to make is, besides don't carry things that you don't know how to use, is your medications. If you're bringing groups of people, make sure all the medications, the OTCs, the over-the-counter prescriptions, they're single use. You don't want any kind of cross-contamination happening with large pill bottles, where you dump 4 pills on somebody's hand who just had it in a river and there's Giardia or something on there. So we don't want to have any problems arise like that further down the road. All right, so now we'll talk about, that's it for the 10 essentials. The next thing we'll talk about is where to hike, some weather, and terrain classification information. So where to hike, I'm not sure where everybody's from, but local municipal and county parks are probably a good place to start. Excuse me. Their mapping systems are usually kind of rogue and not too in depth, but it definitely gets the job done, as far as those local municipal or county parks go. And then there's state parks. Some state parks have really great mapping systems. I think it depends on where you are in the country, in the US, or where you are in the world. But state parks are usually larger plots of land. Trails, or some of the areas may be a little more remote than others. And then your next thing would be federal parks, which is like US Forest Service land, National Park Service, Bureau of Land Management, Department of the Interior, property like that. But where to hike depends on kind of what your goals are, or what you want to see, what you want to do. When I'm hiking or backpacking, I like to have some type of visual features along the way, whether it's a mountain range or waterfalls, things of that nature. Those interest me. Some people just like walking through deep woods, whatever floats your boat as far as that goes on where to hike. Terrain classification is a really, really important factor to keep in mind when you're planning a hike. I use that daily, depending, I'll see my clients at the trailhead before we head into the woods, and I'll determine on which trails I'm going to take them on to get to whatever we're doing. If it is just a hike or if it's, rock climbing or something, based on them. So terrain classification is classed out into 6 levels. For hiking, there's really 4 that are important. The final 2 don't really relate to hiking so much. So class 1 is going to be flat ground, up to 15 degrees in angle, usually. Nothing crazy. These are usually your local parks, shoreline parks, things of that nature, but they're usually 15 degrees or less in steepness. Class 2, you're looking at a little more steepness, maybe a little rocky trail, but those are usually like 15 to 25 degrees. But those are your easy hikes. So your class 1 and 2 are usually classified as easy in most areas that I'm familiar with or that I've seen. Moderate is going to be class 3 terrain. That's usually like 25 to 40 to 45 degrees in inclination. That you may have to use your hands to scramble here and there, depending on your physical conditioning, but it's really not necessary. There's no equipment involved or needed to be involved unless there's a rescue that needed to be performed. But again, 45 or 25 to 45 degrees. Class 4 terrain, this is where you're usually using your hands. You're scrambling on rock. You need to use your hands to kind of gain ascension up that slope or rocky area. And that's usually like 45 to 60 degrees in angle or degrees. That those areas, depending on your physical conditioning, some people use ropes in terrain like that. We do when we're guiding clients up that. It really depends on them. There's different rope methods that are really out of the scope for your basic hiking class, but they're called confidence roping, short pitching, and short roping. That's what we use as mountain guides. But again, that area can usually be accomplished with some basic scrambling. Just make sure as you're looking at that terrain, when you get into that you're constantly turning around and looking at your route down. You don't want to get yourself in any situation where you may need some technical skills to get back down or for the descension process. And then class 5 terrain is usually like 60 degrees or more. That's your vertical rock terrain. That's for like rock climbing methods where we're using features on the rock to gain progress up. And then class 6 is where we're using our equipment to gain progress up. So those last 2 are really not classifications for hiking. They're definitely technical terrain. So class 1 to 4 is probably what you're going to be traveling on. And depending on where you are in the country, there may be some give or take as far as the degrees go, but it's usually in that area of those I mentioned. Weather is a really important factor. I use multiple weather resources. I also, over the years of being a guide, I'm really good at judging the weather by the cloud types that are out and some other various weather factors, thickness of the air, barometric pressure, things like that. But definitely use multiple weather resources. Don't just stick with one, even though you swear by weather.com or WeatherBug or AccuWeather. Look at multiple sources because, I'm outside every single day working, for more than a third of my life as far as professional goes. And I've been out there since I was, 9 years old. And, weather resources are so unreliable. It seems to be getting worse and worse as the years go on. So use multiple sources. If it's a winter environment, use NOAA as far as snow depth charts go, so you don't get yourself into any predicament where you don't have any means of traction on your feet other than just your boots. And when I say means of traction, I mean like micro spikes, crampons, snowshoes, skis. You may need those in a winter setting. So that's a good factor, but weather is definitely a big one. Another thing on my list here is inform yourself on local search and rescue teams. I think this is really important because when you do call 911, there's a whole dispatch dialogue or method that they have to go down. I was an urban EMT volunteer for, probably 10 or 11 years, but there is a process that they go through. It starts off with them calling the local police, and then depending on the issue, it could be the local first aid squad or the local fire department. And by the time they get to the right resources, you could be in for a really, really bad day. So if you know right away that you're deep into a park and the local search and rescue team, you can let 911 know to call out that SAR team so they're not wasting resources like ambulance personnel or fire departments when they don't have the training or the equipment to locate you and extricate you from the wilderness versus your local search and rescue team, which if it's a wilderness search and rescue team, they definitely do. If you're in like class 4 terrain or, higher than that, then you're looking at a local mountain rescue team. It really depends on the terrain. So it's nice to familiarize yourself with the local search and rescue teams in your area. Some of depending on the wilderness setting of your area too, a lot of 911 is pretty familiar with that. But, we're in New Jersey. They're very unfamiliar with it. So, we usually have to direct them when we do call for that. Who to go with for hiking? That's another one. Depends on what you're doing, your spouse, your friends, your family. There's a lot of local hiking clubs I see around. Some of them are really great. I have seen a lot of meetup groups, which seem to be like an extension of hiking. I don't have any recommendations for meetup groups, but definitely do your research before you go out there with meetup groups. Guide services are always good if you don't mind paying for that. Just make sure they're a certified guide. Make sure they're certified through the American Hiking Guides Association or some international governing body as far as that goes. Anybody can be a guide. You don't need to have credentials to start a guide service in the US. You don't need to have credentials to get permits for that, but make sure they're a certified guide for the activity that you're doing. Some other things I would like to mention. There's some questions here. I can have the library send those out to you as far as the 10 essentials list go for that question, Alexis. Some other things I'd like to mention. So leave no trace. This information you could find on lnt.org. So that's leave no trace. You're welcome. Leave no trace. lnt.org. They put together 7 ethics to kind of help you do certain things in the wilderness, especially preserving the environment. That's a really big one with them. So planning ahead and preparing is one of the 7 principles of leave no trace. Pre-trip preparation and planning. This one's really important. I think it's definitely the most important out of all of them as far as I'm concerned. Planning and having the right equipment, planning your route, doing all of that before you head out there. This way you kind of mitigate any issues that may arise when you're out there. As far as equipment goes, terrain, you may not be able to travel up specific terrain. So if you plan your trip pretty well, that's always a great thing to do before you head out there. Some other things on here, some of them may be overnight based, but camp and travel on durable surfaces. If you're staying out for the night, make sure it's on a durable surface. Stay on trails if there are trails. If it's in a remote setting, I try and travel on, it depends on where I am, but usually there's trails out. I worked in Alaska for a period of time where we traveled off trail for the entire trips, but that's an exception. Most areas have pretty well established trails or some type of trail system that's going on there. So try and stay on those trails, even when you're using or, going to the bathroom to relieve yourself. Make sure you walk in an area where, there are trails, but go off trail for that. Leave what you find. Don't go picking up stuff out of the woods. We want it to be there in 20 years when we bring our kids and our grandkids or whatever. So the more things you take out of there, the less it is for them to see. And I can give an example of that. I lived in Arizona for a couple years when I was younger, and the petrified wood, people were constantly taking chunks of it out of the petrified forest over there to where there was almost none left. And which was a shame, because that was what brought people to that area to see that. And people were picking up little chunks here and there, and eventually they're picking up big chunks, and eventually the park closed the area down until they were able to mitigate that issue. Excuse me. So leave what you find out there. Next one of their principles is respect wildlife. This one I probably don't need to discuss, but definitely don't respect that. That's their house. So respect wildlife. Next one on the list is dispose of waste properly. For a day hike, really pack in, pack out is something that we tell everybody, or I tell all my clients or participants. Whatever you bring into the woods with you, make sure you bring out with you. But dispose of waste properly goes right down to going to the bathroom. Make sure you know how to go to the bathroom. You don't want to just do your business and bury it with some leaves. You want to dig a small cat hole and bury that. In some areas, you may have to bring that waste out with you, depending on where you are. There's something called, they used to be called wag bags, but they have a few different names now, depending on where you are. But dispose of waste properly. Overnight trips, same thing goes for, cleaning water that you're cleaning your cooking systems with, things like that. But pack in, pack out. Next principle would be minimize campfire impact. Again, this would be something more for overnight. Another thing on the list here is be considerate of other visitors. No radios, trail etiquette's always good. If you're traveling downhill, kind of move out of the way for those uphill travelers. They're exerting more energy. Their heart rate's pumping. Move out of the way, let them kind of pass you. Bikers yield to hikers and other travelers in the woods as well. So trail etiquette's definitely a good one, but be considerate of other people out there. Don't go blasting music and singing hi ho down the trail. And then if you're going to stop to take a break, relax off trail a little bit. Don't stop in the middle of the trail to do what you need to do. Move off the trail so other people can pass by. And as far as that uphill thing goes that I mentioned, usually if you're traveling on fairly steep terrain, like, maybe class 3 or class 4 terrain, we usually stop for like every 15 minutes or so for a quick break. If it's fairly flat ground, that easy terrain, like class 1 or 2, usually stop like 5 minutes every hour. It does depend on the group or the people that are with me or my clients or, whoever you're bringing out there with you. Depends on that. But you don't want to stop for too long. You don't want your heart rate to drop too much, because then you're not going to want to get back up. You're going to get all comfortable, unless it's lunchtime out there. But that's definitely a good thing to remember. A few other things here I have. So bear safety. This is always a common question. It really depends on what area of the country or the world you're in as far as that goes. I live in New Jersey, so there's black bears all over the place, but they're more like raccoons than they are actual bears in this area. They're definitely a breed of their own around here, but they're more scared of us than we are of them. Usually the only thing we see on a bear is their butt running away from us. But we see bears out there a lot. Non-lethal bear management is definitely a good thing if you can do so. Again, that depends on what type of bear is in your area. If you're in an area where polar bears frequent, non-lethal bear management probably isn't an exception. But where we are, where there's black bears, usually just loud noise scares them away. But bear spray is definitely something good to carry with you, and make sure it's bear spray. And it's not mace. We don't want any type of pepper spray. That's just going to irritate them and anger them. You want something that has a specific chemical in it that's for bears. It's capsaicin. So make sure it has that. And where you keep your bear spray on you is really important as well, too. You want it so it's readily accessible or deployable, however you want to word that. You want to be able to pull it out quickly and use it, because by the time you go fishing around in your backpack, you get your backpack off your back, you get it on the ground, you start digging, the bear's going to be right on top of you. So you want to either keep it in a chest strap or in a waist belt somewhere, or on your hip belt somewhere, your shoulder strap on your backpack. But again, make sure it's readily accessible and ready to be used, and know how to use it as well. Don't start reading the can while you're out there, because again, the bear is going to be right up on you by the time you get done with the first section of that. Bear bells are great. we carry bear bells more so than bear spray or other methods. They work really well. It's just a little jingly Santa Claus style bell, really small, maybe the size of a walnut, and it can attach to anything on your backpack, but it jingles. And I know it kind of goes against that be considerate of other visitors, but bears are definitely that one exception where we want to let them know that we're out there. Again, the respect wildlife thing. We're in their house. This is their living room, their bedroom, however you want to word that, but you want to respect them. And, when we do come into their area, we want to let them know that we're there. We don't want to come upon a bear and a cubs and something like that. That could end up being a really, really bad day for you. So I think that's pretty much it as far as basic hiking information that I have goes. Are there any questions that you guys have out there that you want to shoot up on this little chat on the side here? You can go ahead and ask a question, Alex. If you want to turn your audio on or you want to type it in, whatever works for you.
Yeah, hi, Joey. Thank you. Great presentation, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. What's your question?
I just had a question. I on the weekends, I usually take I have small children. I have an 11-year-old daughter and a 7-year-old son.
Mm-hmm.
I try to take them on, light hikes around the state in New Jersey.
Uh-huh.
I just wondered what you would recommend for like families and small children locally as good places to explore, maybe with a little bit of a challenge.
And how old did you say they are?
My daughter's 11 and my son's 7.
7, okay.
But we could do like last weekend we did about 5 miles. We could do like a 4 or 5 mile hike, something like that. Maybe a little bit longer.
The 11-year-old is probably pretty easy to find hikes for. The 7-year-old might be a little difficult. Depends on how.
He's actually better than she is, to believe it or not.
Oh, well, there you go. I was just going to ask how adventurous the 7-year-old is, but there are some really anything north of Interstate 80 is a good area for really challenging hikes. I'm not sure what part of the state you're in.
We're in Middlesex County.
Middlesex. All right. So even Watchung Reservation, that's a nice one. But I mean, it's not too challenging there, but it has a lot of historic issues. But the Delaware Water Gap's really great. Alamucci State Park is really nice. I really like Alamucci State Park. That's a great area. Spruce Run, Round Valley. Some of those have more challenging trails. Usually in New Jersey, usually anything like north central and northwestern is nice because you get into that, that previous glacial zone. So that there's some really steep cliff areas and it's pretty nice up there. Once you get down past the Raritan River, the only kind of steepness you're looking at is on the northern New Jersey shore over like by Atlantic Highlands area. The topography really is fairly flat once you get down in this area. But anything northwest of you is great. Sussex County, High Point State Park, Stoke State Forest. But check out Mount Tammany. I think that's probably a good one. It sounds like they could probably do.
Where's that located?
That's in the southern Delaware Water Gap, where Interstate 80 crosses over into Pennsylvania. Okay. It's right in that.
Yeah, there's a road right there. I don't recall what it is. It's like right before you cross the Delaware on 80. There's an old road.
Old Mine Road, yes.
Old Mine. Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah, those trails over there are great. That's great for kids and people of all ages and physical, fitness levels too.
If anybody ever gets a chance, I think it's closed in the wintertime, but in the summertime, I think they open Old Mine Road. It's a fantastic drive if anybody on here ever gets a chance.
Yeah, that's nice. I hope that answered your question, Alex.
Yeah, it does. I'm always looking for new ideas and to get involved. Is there? I'm sure you mentioned it, but there's an organization that does all these different. I mean,
like a hiking
club organization, but I mean, there are different levels of certification with hiking, is what you were saying?
Yeah, if you want to get into it as a career path, the career is called Outdoor Adventure and Education with the U.S. Department of Labor. But if you want to be a certified hiking guide, there's, a bunch of prerequisites you have to acquire. You can check out hikingtraining.com.
Okay.
I started that organization in 2009. It's nationally recognized. By the end of the year, it'll be internationally recognized. But that's if you want to do it as a career path or a career choice, something like that.
No, just recreational. But I'm gonna drop off and give some other people opportunities to ask you some questions. But thank you.
You're welcome. There's another question from James here. It says, what are some level 1 or 2 trails you'd recommend for hiking beginner in upstate New York? I work in upstate New York in the Catskill region a lot. I'm not really familiar with upstate New York, more so the Adirondacks I'm familiar with, but the Catskills in New Paltz area are really great. There are some class 2 trails up there. I'm not too familiar with any class 1 trails because there's a lot of canyons involved in that area. That has a lot of glacial impact up in that area. But that's, I definitely check out New Paltz area or the Catskills. Jess says, I love Mount Tammany. That's great, Jess. Awesome. And then Zena Canton has 2 questions. Oh, you're welcome, James. 2 questions from Zena are, do you recommend carrying water bladders? To answer that question, I don't recommend carrying them. It really depends on you. People tend to drink a lot more when they use water bladders. I used to carry a 3-liter with me when I was in my 20s, and I felt like I just burned through that water. I mean, it could have been me being a 20-something-year-old male that's just burning through water, or it could have been the fact that that little nozzle was dangling in front of my face. So I guess it really depends on you. You have one, but find it hard to get used to. Yeah, it definitely does take a little bit of getting used to, especially if it's in a winter setting where, the tube tends to freeze up a lot on you, even if it has that covering on it. So that's always an issue too. I like to have a water bottle. I'll stop, open up my water bottle. I use a wide mouth water bottle because it fits on the water filtration system that I use, that it has the same type of thread. So I'm able to filter water into a bottle and then purify it. With mentioning that too, if you do what I just mentioned, make sure you crack the bottle, the threads loose to the top loose, and flip the water bottle over so the water in the threads gets purified as well. But water bottle works better for me. And then your second question, was how about lacing your hiking boots in specific ways for more support? I don't know about more support as far as different types of lacing methods go, but they do help with issues with your feet. I don't see how they would provide more support, but there are different lacing methods where you can skip, like lower eyelets on your boots, maybe like the second or third eyelet. If you have wider feet, that helps with that. Or different lacing methods for the upper area. I lace my boots fairly tight. Just make sure you're not lacing them where they're cutting off circulation in any way. We don't want to do that. But that definitely works for me. Jess, her question is, what should you do if you lose your trail? Search and rescue I think that might be definitely a different Zoom meeting. That could be a really long and in-depth one, but some basic things. There's a STOP acronym. It's STOP. So the first one is definitely stop. You want to look at the area that you're in, stop and figure out what's, where you are and what you think you're gonna do out there. And then it's more so for survival. But it's stop, think, observe, and plan. I teach that during our wilderness survival classes. So stop, get your bearings, try and calm down if you know you're lost. Think about what you're going to do to get out of that situation or develop a plan. Don't ever just stay in one spot unless something's forcing you to stay there, like wildlife or weather conditions or something like that. Then observe your surroundings or your resources on what you have and how you're going to get out of there. And then make a plan, figure out how to get out of there. I constantly turn around when I'm on an unknown trail to see what the trail looks like going the other way, because it looks completely different. So that's definitely something there. But map and compass skills that's going to be the answer to that question, I think. What should you do if you lose your trail? Learn how to use a map and compass and be pretty efficient and proficient in it. Nisha says, what water filter do I use? I use the MSR MiniWorks. That one is really easy. It's field maintainable, so it's really easy to break down and deal with in the field if there's any issues. It has a ceramic cartridge. The thread on the bottom is NPT, so it's National Pipe Thread. It screws onto any of those wide mouth water bottles that you see out there. So it works for me in my job. I like that filter. It's a little on the heavier end, but again, it works for me. Or you could use the MSR Guardian. That's a micro filter, so that purifies as well. Tin has a question. Oh, I'm sorry. It was alltrails.com. Any more questions, guys? Ajit, if I'm saying that right, do you know of any online or physical stores specialized in selling shoes, clothing, gear, etc. for hiking? Amazon, of course. Yeah, everybody goes to Amazon. But Sierra Trading Post is a good one. I like that one. Black Diamond. We get a lot of pro deals, so we stick with specific sites. But backcountry.com is a really good one. I like that one. They have a really good selection. Sierra Trading Post is nice. Campmore.com is great. They're based in northern New Jersey, but they have a great selection of products on their website. Or you can check out our website. We sell equipment, nmgproshop.com. But backcountry.com is a good one. Any more questions, guys? You're welcome. All right, guys, that is it for my basic hiking information. Again, my name is Joe. I'm the owner of Northeast Mountain Guiding, and I'm the president and founder of the American Hiking Guides Association. I hope some of this information helped you guys out. If you want to find any information out, Nadja's just going to send out an email with some more information, or you can go to the website that's on the screen in front of you. That's nmgadventures.com.